Alan Thomas, thank you so much for coming on the Inner Edison podcast. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. We'll get into a bunch of stuff, but first thing I don't normally have on my podcast is somebody about dieting. So let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got there, and any Edison moments along the way.
Yeah. No, it's well, and I get that a lot because when I talk about what we do, I don't talk a lot about eating broccoli and the typical things about dieting. It really came out of about 7 years ago when I stepped on the scale and saw 304 pounds staring back at me, and realized I'd been in the life insurance business where I dealt with senior citizens for a long time, and realized I'd never met a guy. I was 55 and I'd never met a guy that was 65 that weighed over 100 pounds overweight. And so standing there on that scale, I realized I was very likely going to be called my wife's first husband, not because she was shopping around. Hopefully she wasn't. But because I was going to be dead because of the fork and spoon. So it led me, and she actually joined me on the journey too. She didn't have quite as much weight to lose, but it led to us dropping 192 pounds together in 260 days back then. And it was never intended to be a mission and kind of a calling, but it came out of that. And it was, and it's interesting you say that it's not having people talk about diet, because I really don't talk about diet. I tell people all the time, it's always the decision. It's never the diet that'll drive it. And do you have to change what you eat to lose weight? Of course you do. I mean, that's common sense. I mean, but at the end of the day, if diets and exercise plans were the only thing in the equation, everybody would have six-pack abs and look like James Bond models. But it's the other things that I had to focus on that really led to me escaping 35 years of obesity, really.
And people don't realize, our nation, we're so heavy.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. It's not just here now. I mean, it's interesting statistic. I mean, in the United States, 70% overweight, 40% obese or morbidly obese. But worldwide now, we're tipping 1 billion people, 650 million adults, 350 million adolescents and children and teenagers that are obese or morbidly obese, 1 out of 8 people. And what's even crazier than that is every 7 seconds, somebody's dying of an obesity related illness. And all the health stuff is really important. I want people to live a long time and to be healthy and have that. But what is so crazy is like the work that we do now, working with men and women, we realize that there's so much potential that gets lost. When people have it, when a man or woman has an extra 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 200 pounds that they're carrying, they're not doing the things that they would do. And I'm not just talking about physical things. I mean, they're not stepping out in their businesses. It's costing them in relationships. It's actually the number 3 reason for divorce in the United States is weight gain. Behind infidelity, money, weight gain, number 3. And people don't realize that, after talking, I've probably spoken to, I don't know how many thousand men and women individually, having conversations about obesity that struggle with their weight. And, we've built so many coping mechanisms that people are just kind of in like a deer in the headlight when it comes to getting the weight off. But it's so funny when they get clear on what to do. And it's never the diet. I'll just tell you that. I mean, it's like when we work with people all the time, and first thing out of my mouth is I always say, I'm never going to tell you what to eat, and I'm never going to tell you what exercise to do, but we'll get the weight off of you. And we've seen people, and I'm not saying this to boast, I'm saying it really to impress upon men and women that are struggling, that if you're looking for a diet or a magic pill to solve the problem, it's not going to be what solves it. It won't. Like I said, you got to change what you eat. But at the end of the day, it's how much is it costing you to carry the weight? How much is it costing your kids? Because when we think about it, people don't realize kids, like my daughter, who's now she's a senior in college, she at the time, she wouldn't bring friends home because she was ashamed of how her dad looked, because she was being made fun of, not because she loved me and all. I mean, I had my middle son. I've got 4 kids, and my middle son, who, he said to my wife, and I didn't know this at the time. He said, "I guess Dad doesn't love us enough to get the weight off." Boy, I mean, when you start thinking about those kind of things, and then start thinking about every room you walk into as a man or as a woman, if you're thinking about your weight, it's going to slow you down. I'm not just talking about physical. I'm talking about up here between the ears. If you're always got that monkey on your back, and it'd be like doing a podcast on dial-up. I don't think I've ever said that, but it would be. I mean, if you can imagine, if you're old enough, Ed, to remember dial-up internet.
Yeah, I remember.
Can you imagine streaming a video and us doing this on dial-up?
No, because you couldn't stream anything on there. That was back when we had floppy disks that we didn't have hard drives. We had floppy disks, and you couldn't do anything else. But the biggest issue, so when you decided to lose the weight, you were working in insurance. Are you still doing that to this day, or are you just doing this now?
I do this now. I've been, I still keep my life insurance license active, because when I have a client call me, I had actually one call me today, I'll help them over the telephone. And so I want to be licensed before I give any kind of advice for insurance. But no, I focus on this. This is something that just kind of chased us down. I mean, I had people coming to me all the time asking me, "Well, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? How'd you do it?" And finally I just gave in to helping, men and women that were struggling. And it's just fun to see them win. It really is, because, we've got a world that wants to have a surgery done. Mm-hmm. That's that's what was running through my mind back in the day. Thank God I didn't. I mean, people have all kind of medical issues from that. They want to take a pill. They're looking for a magic pill. And ultimately what I was always looking for, and I think what most people are looking for, they want to find that thing, that magical thing that you can eat as much as you want. You can, whenever you want and whatever you want. And it doesn't exist. I mean, it doesn't. It's just like what you do with your podcasting. You put a lot of work into this. Clearly, you have a lot of, over time. You may not have to do as much work now as you did in the beginning, because you set things up a certain way to be successful at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning, you probably had to do a ton of work to get it off the ground, so that you build up your audience. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of work you probably did.
Well, it's totally different back then versus now too. So I've been doing this for 3 years, and I've been on radio since 2018, talk radio, and that's a totally different world too. And the difference, you grow from talking. The more you talk, the more you do, the better you are. And I go back to my first so many episodes, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't even listen to them. I can't listen to myself today anyway. I don't like, you know what I mean? I didn't realize I had a deep voice until I put headphones on.
Really? Wow. Yeah, you got a deep voice. You got a great voice for podcasts and radio. So go figure, right?
And also calling women. It didn't hurt to call women with it either. So
there you go. Yeah. But if you can imagine being, even starting today with all the technologies available, you still have a learning curve, and it's no different with weight. I mean, you've got to put some intentional action to get the weight off, but maintaining it's nowhere near as hard as it is to get it off. But you can't ignore it either. You can't go back to the way of doing things. So we see people that have struggled for their whole lives turned around when they start focusing on the things that they could have been focusing all along. It's kind of magical to see it, but it's not magic. It's just they're doing what it takes.
And I think a lot of people have gotten overweight just because they focus on one or two things like work or family, and they don't focus on what they're doing while they're gaining the weight, because it's so much easier to gain it and fun to gain it than it is to lose it. And I mean, even myself, I've been, super skinny and been super heavy, and, it just depends. The more stress I am, the more, cortisol and everything else is coming out. And that's really, and I think a lot of it has to do with just regulating what you eat and when you eat. So
100%. It's like people say to me a lot of times, I get, because when I draw somebody who's in their 60s or 70s that wants to be considered for a program, they're a lot of them will tell me, well, I can't exercise. And I'm like, so? And because now, is it bad? Do I want people to exercise? Of course I do. I mean, it's makes you feel better, all these things. But it's like one of our clients who's 72. He's got fused vertebrae, so he cannot walk without a walker. He's bent over. He's a heart attack survivor and got all kind of heart problems that are not going away regardless of what he weighs. And he was a unicorn. He was 388 pounds when he came to us, and he's dropped 140 pounds, and he cannot exercise. And I told him when he did that, it's just going to be harder for you. I said, but that you 100% can get the weight off, because it's not whether you can run laps. I said, I hope you get to the point you can exercise, but you can get this weight off so that you can survive. Because he was a 72-year-old guy that's more than 100 pounds overweight. That you don't see him. I mean, right. They're unicorns, and and it's funny. He just watching him win. I mean, he's still got a little bit to go. He's got another 60 pounds to go to get to where he wants to. But it's like, excuse the food metaphor, piece of cake. Now he knows what to do.
So. Well, because I had a world champion female who was a fitness lady on, and she's like, I the way I look at my food, I put in Oreo cookies and I put in other stuff, but it's part of my overall numbers so that I can have that stuff. And it's all about what you're planning on doing. What are you willing to give up to get? That's the real question. And that's anywhere in life with business and everything. So this is now your full-time business, I take it.
Yep, has been for 3 years. Yep.
Okay, and what I assume that you do it from your house.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we're virtual.
I do it virtual.
Yeah.
Is it a training program? What is it?
Well, when somebody is invited into our Rethink dieting program, it's live virtual coaching as well as modules that we've done over and over again. We got tired of saying the same thing over and again, so I put it in a format so that people can watch it over and over again with that. But there's always a customization that's required. I mean, it's when you get somebody that weighs 450 pounds. And they've been obese for 40 years or 30 years. I mean, it's a different conversation than somebody that's 50 pounds overweight and they're maybe been that way for the last 10 years. So we have to customize a piece of it, but no, it's all virtual though, 100% virtual. And because when it really we call it Rethink dieting because it really does boil down to the thinking. It really does. And when they grasp that they can get it done, that's half the battle is done at that point. When they see, I know you mentioned working Oreo cookies into your diet, and I totally agree with that. I mean, I think God made Oreo cookies. There's nothing wrong with it as long as you know how much you can have. It's right. Moderation. But I had one of our clients years ago. I call him the apple pie guy. The day after Easter, he came to one of our calls and he said, "You know what I had for breakfast this morning, Alan?" I said, "What'd you have?" He said, "Apple pie." He thought I was going to chew him out or something. He said, "Apple pie." I said, "Good for you. You figured this stuff out, didn't you?" He said, "I did. I knew I couldn't have it yesterday." And he did basically what you just said. He worked it into his plan like we showed him how to do. And he said, "You mean you're not mad about that?" I said, "Heck no. Apple pie is great." I said, "Just decide what you want more." He said, "Well, I did. I didn't want it bad enough yesterday because I knew it threw me off my pace that I've set out that I'm going to reach my ideal weight in. But I knew I could have it today if I worked some things around." I said, "That's exactly what changing what you're thinking about it does." And he said, "Oh, wow." He said, "You're like no guilt." I said, "That's right. There shouldn't be any guilt in it." I said, "It's just food." I said, it's a tool. I said, "You need to eat it, and you're going to, and Oreo cookies." And we had a lady recently had similar experience with a donut. And yeah. I'm like, "You didn't eat all 12, did you?" She said, "I sure didn't." And her husband's very thin. And she said he was really glad. So, but she had one. So I just really tell our clients, I don't preach to anybody, but say, I believe Jesus declared all the food good. He just didn't say eat it all at once, which is what we try to do.
Yep. We don't have control over our eating. And again, it has a lot to do where you live too. Like when I was in San Diego for 20 years, I was the skinniest I ever was because I worked out all the time. I was outside riding bikes all the time because we rode,
Mm-hmm.
I rode up and down the coast. You move to Northern California in the summers, it gets 115. It's a little harder to ride outside or do stuff outside. So again, that's it. Your lifestyle, where you live, everything has to do with everything. So you have to
Sure.
adjust it somehow. So
Sure, and there's always there's always a way for the committed. I mean, I always challenge people that there's something you can do. There's something you can do, and do what you can. Even the people that can't exercise, I said there's some movement you do because motion will drive your emotions. And if you're fit, and if you're feeling down and depressed, you're going to reach for a lot more of those Oreo cookies because because of that endorphin rush. And so it's no different than somebody who likes to drink wine, and nothing wrong with that in moderation. But at the end of the day, you can't have it every day, all day, or you run into problems.
yeah. But the problem with wine is then they also got to adjust it for the slowing down the metabolism and everything else, and they don't necessarily do that. As you can tell, I've been on a
100%.
lot of stuff. I've done a lot of this myself, and
No.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
and
No.
it's
No.
knowing that
100%.
information. But for me, for so long, I never had to worry
Mm-hmm.
about what I ate. I was
Mm-hmm.
always, I lifted a lot and I worked out a lot. Now I
Mm-hmm.
don't run anymore because I can't. I mean, I can. It just hurts my knees, so I walk. I'll walk 5 miles,
Mm-hmm.
but that takes an hour and something. You know what I mean? It takes a lot
Mm-hmm.
longer than if I ran it. It would take me, 30 some minutes. If I could.
Well,
So
yeah, and it's like me. I don't enjoy running. I mean, running's
I
not fun, but
hated
I
it. It was
love
the one thing I hated. Yeah.
but I love cycling. I mean, we cycle. We got a great place on Amelia Island where we live. We cycle every day because I love it. But you cannot outrun your fork or spoon. I mean, it's always unless you're training for the Olympics or running ultra marathons. I mean, certainly you could at that point, but you have to do that. And at the end of the day, figuring out what's the extra weight is costing you. I mean, it really is. It will certainly cost you your health and time. I mean, I've seen studies that equate 1 pound of obesity per pound about a month worth of life. And you see a lot of different conflicting reports, but clearly it takes time off of people. And you start thinking about, what is that time worth? I mean, what is that time worth? I mean, what could you do? What potential is being hidden by this weight? I mean, where are you stopping short and not maybe stepping in? Like, you probably got people listening to your podcast that want to be you. They want to do what you do. And there's a lot of people out there that if they've got an extra 100 pounds on them, they won't get in front of a camera. They just won't. I mean, I know one of our clients he does affiliate marketing, and he dropped about 88 pounds with us, but he was very successful in affiliate marketing. But when he got together with the other successful people in this industry, none of them were obese like he was. And it just kind of made him hold back. And since he got his weight off, his business has exploded even more because he's not got that monkey on his back anymore. And I'm not talking about the physical monkey. I'm talking about the emotional monkey that people carry. And because they do. If you said you've been really overweight in the past, I mean, that thought pattern where you're not really wanting to step in front of the camera. Maybe some people might, but most people don't. You don't like seeing yourself in a mirror. Maybe you don't want to go into a store because it sucks to have to buy the size 48 slider pants that stretch out to about a 52, which is what I was wearing when I was over 300 pounds. And I mean, it's not fun. And so when you take those elements and you start looking at, God, it's costing me in my relationships, it's costing me in my pocketbook. It's not just costing you health, but it will. I mean, that's the biggest factor. But if health were a big enough factor to move the needle for people, everybody'd be thin. But they, just like I said earlier, but it's not. But I challenge people that are listening to this that, I mean, statistically, 40% of your audience is obese or morbidly obese, whether they admit or not. 70% is either overweight, obese, or morbidly obese. That's just statistics. I challenge them to look at where is it costing you, because you don't know when your number's coming up either. I mean, I've literally had people that talk to us about joining our program that we invited in. I had a guy a few years ago that 2 months after, and he was only about 40 pounds overweight, which is not big in the world that I live in. A lot of people, a lot more weight than that. And he was dead when we followed up with him. I mean, his widow answered the phone, and that really struck me. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, that is, no joke. Didn't mean to blabber. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. It's about you, not me. Everybody knows
I
about
like to
me.
hear about that. That's it. Cool deal.
No, I mean I interject when I should interject, but pretty much I let you talk a little bit. It's a subject that people don't normally talk about, and it is important because we as business owners we focus on the business, we focus, and then we don't focus on our weight. My wife the other day said, you're focusing so much more on the business right now because your industry is so bad that you're
Mm-hmm.
not even focusing on because I lifted every day, worked out every day. I did so much. And then that's kind of went to the wayside over the last few months just because of how my life has been. And so now I'm making changes. I'm reorganizing. I'm moving back home, my office, because I don't want to work at my office all day. I used to, during the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, it taught me I could work out and do my business at the same time,
Yeah.
because I can talk to somebody, go do a set, come back and finish it up, so.
Yeah, it's amazing what the pandemic, how all that it changed. That's what pushed me into doing my business full time, and it really is. And that's when we made the decision, and then kind of put the foot on the gas to do that. But it is interesting when it's no different than eating. I mean, you make the decision that you're going to work out or exercise for 30 minutes, a day, an hour a day, whatever your time frame is, you do it. I mean, and one of the things I challenge people to do, I know a lady we had said she had no time to exercise at all, and she wasn't in great shape to where she was going to do running, or she was going to do cycling. But walking, she could walk. And I said, what's the first thing that you do when you go walking? So I got to put on my shoes. I put on my shoes. I said, you have a particular outfit you wear? She said, mainly just my walking shoes. I said, okay. I said, your challenge for the next week is to see if you can put on your shoes and not walk. And all she did, I said, you come back here next week and you put on your shoes every day, whether you walk an inch or not, I'll count it as a win. But you get extra credit for walking. She walked 8 miles that week because she put on her shoes, just doing that small habitual task of putting on the shoes. It's like you have a habit that you probably do when you go work out. There's probably something you do that's a small thing, and if you do that thing every time, you'll end up working out for the hour and a half, or whatever amount of time that you work out. It's so interesting how we get in these habits. It's like at night, deciding to watch news when I got home from work back when I was doing insurance. It's kind of interesting that I cut off cable television in January of 2017 because I just got tired of all the talking heads, because it was addictive. It was like cocaine to me. Watching it, I've never done real cocaine, but that was like just watching it. It was just kind of a wild time. And I turned the television off. I still had Netflix. We watch a movie or whatever once in a while. It was interesting. Within 2 months, I went on a weight journey that I had no intention to go on, and a weight struggle ended up going away that I'd had for 35 years. And I think there's a connection there too, because I was sitting down in front of the television, and what goes along with television? Well, food goes with television, and it's great. And you sit there, whether it's the ice cream or the single serving bags of Doritos, which they only make them in one size. They say family on them, but they mean family of one. So and Oreos, man, they only make those in single servings too. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
when you're sitting in front of the TV, it's that mindless thing that goes on. So anyway, but I know a lot of this, but some of your listeners that might serve them.
No, because I actually, when I think we talked about this originally. I don't know if we did, but I have AT&T here at the office, and I
Mm-hmm.
had Comcast, and the signal was great down, but it was not, the upload was horrible, and I couldn't do video as well as because I was doing so much video. I'm like, why am I laggy? And I found out that was that. And so I got that at home also. Well, that got me rid of Comcast, which got rid of cable, which I was their long time, subscriber, because I've been connected to cable since I was a kid. Right. And now it's like,
Yeah.
I just do YouTube TV and I'm good, and
Oh
I
yeah.
don't, yeah. And I don't, now, and I'm so busy doing the stuff I'm doing. I've set up at home now, one of the biggest problems is I always have my laptop on my lap when I'm sitting in the chair. So I'd be doing work and then something on. And now, because of how I'm setting this up, when I sit in my chair, I just sit there to relax. You know what I mean? Instead of watching everything. And I don't watch that stuff at night, the news at night. I only watch in the morning to get ready for my daily show because I have to. So.
Yeah, no, I tell one of my next door neighbor, I say, if we get invaded by some other country, I said, on our island where we live, I said, come over and let me know because I don't watch news. So, right, it's very little I can do about it. So I got unaddicted to the news channels a long time ago.
I always tell people, don't vote emotional, vote pocketbook, and you'll do fine.
There you go.
Because we never do anything emotionally right. If we're emotionally making decisions, it's going to be wrong. And that's unfortunately all the people did last time. And I won't get on. That's my other radio show that I talk about.
We probably speak the same language. So,
yeah. Well, you're in Florida, so of course, yeah.
There you go. There you go. North Florida above Orlando. So,
is there a difference? I assume there's a difference now.
Look at the demographics. Show. Yeah, I mean, as far as the voting demographics, yeah. When you get above Orlando, you're more like a Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina demographic.
So kind of like conservative. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Not that there was anything wrong with liberals until they turned the term the way it is now.
Yeah.
A libertarian, they were in the middle. So I don't know. Not the ones they have now. They talk about, but yeah, normally. So
I just have a belief that I never argue with somebody who's already made up their mind. That's the reason I never talk politics with people. So my dad gave me that advice years ago. He said, "Son, never argue with somebody that's already made up their mind." And so good advice from Dad.
I always say I don't like to have a. I forget this. My grandfather used to say having a. What was it? God, I can't think. It was with an unarmed opponent. Having a battle of wits with an unarmed opponent.
I'm writing that one down. I love that. That's really good. Battle of wits. So that took me a minute. I had to. I was unarmed. Well, I was unarmed for that. So
it took me a minute to remember because I haven't said it in so long.
Oh, that is so good.
All right,
that's gold.
Yeah, you can write that one down. All right, so how do people get connected with you, and how are you different than everything else? Because there's all this health stuff out there. This is one of the largest markets there is because people fail constantly. They restart over. They constantly. I mean, that's why Weight Watchers is so huge, is because they fail constantly and have to go back in and sign back up and all that fun stuff. How are you different?
We're the biggest piece of where we're different, I believe, is the fact that we tell every one of our clients up front, we'll never tell you what to eat. We'll never tell you what exercise to do. And I've proven it over and over and over again. I even had one of our clients who started with us at about he was almost 460 pounds, and he had never been on a diet, and which is, he is a very unique individual, and that he'd never been on a diet, never tried to lose weight. And he said, "But what am I going to eat?" And I said, "Well, if your wife and two daughters were being held at gunpoint, and the only way to get them back alive was to eat in such a way that you would positively lose a pound or more a week every week until you reached your ideal weight. Could you do that? Could you save their life?" He said, "Well, I could do it for them." And I said, "Well, what would you do?" And he says, and he thought, just real quiet, phone went blank. We were on a regular telephone call. This was several years ago. And he said, "I know what I could do. I could eat less." I said, "That's where you start." And he started there, and he's down just approaching 200 pounds of weight loss since then. So it's the decision, and we put the focus on that. Do people have to change what they eat? Of course they do. There's quantifiable strategies, but like you said earlier, you talking about the Oreo cookies, you nailed it. I mean, there's a way to work out things just like you would in a business or anything else. So that's our focus. We focus on the outcome, getting somebody to that weight so they can live the life that they wanted to live. Not about whether they eat broccoli or not. I could care less. I mean, I want them to be healthy, and I want them to move, and I want them to be active. But at the end of the day, they're missing out, and that's what our focus is. On what are you missing, and what value can you get that leverage. Archimedes, he's a guy a zillion years ago. He said, "If you give me a lever long enough and a place to set it, I can move the world." So we show people how to get leverage on themselves so that they will not quit and go the distance. and that's where we're really good at. And I've been there. I've sat between the elbows of a really fat guy, and so I know what it feels like. But people can reach us. You asked, actually, probably the best way, if they'll go to transformmyfuture.com/ask Ed, and transformmyfuture.com/ask Ed. I've got a training that prepared for your audience. It's a recorded training of the 5-step strategy that my wife and I used to lose 192 pounds in 260 days, and how we show our clients how to do the same thing. And totally free, nothing to buy. They don't have to come with their pocketbook, because there's no place to push a button on our website to buy what we do. It's invitation only, but they watch it, and it'll help them. We've gotten a lot of people that have wanted that, and they can check us out at transformmyfuture.com as well. But it's, if they go to transformmyfuture.com/ask Ed, they will find that training.
I appreciate that. I was just thinking to lose that first 100 pounds when you're that heavy is a lot easier than to lose that last 100 pounds, because we really have to eat a lot to get that big. And people don't realize you're eating, when it says a serving of 7, that's what you're eating, a serving of 7, not a serving of 1. If you did because I watched a guy, they had this thing where one guy went off of what the serving size was on everything he ate, and he lost weight, and the other ones didn't. And it was amazing, just by focusing on a serving size is how they were able to lose weight. He was eating everything, but just going off the serving size. And I find that walking for me is just as good as running for me, and it's less stress on my knees. My biggest thing is where, I don't know if you've seen this, but have you done cold plunges at all?
I have not done cold plunges, but I'm familiar with them. Yeah.
So I was going to get a cold plunge, and last year my wife's like, we just got our pool put in October, finished in October. It was a huge event. And she's like, well, why don't you try the pool? Because we're in Modesto, it gets 30 in December and that kind of stuff. The pool was about 40 degrees, and typically those things are between, you want to stay under 59 down to 37-ish, is what you were doing. And so I did it, and I got to tell you, I dropped a lot of weight just by that, because of their metabolism afterwards, because you don't take a shower to warm up. You just dry off, and you can, warm up slowly and whatever. I'm telling you, it was amazing how much my metabolism changed during that period of time. So
yeah, no, there's a lot of ways to do it, and it's like I tell people. I said, at the end of the day, it boils down to math. I mean, it really does. And when you can dial in the math for your particular body, it really works out very, very predictably. It's like when I was on my weight loss journey in 2017, I did it publicly. People saw me losing weight publicly, and I set a date to have the 129 pounds off, and I was within 5 days of the day I predicted. I actually predicted I'd be there in 2. And I'm not saying this to boast. I'm saying it to impress upon people that it's possible, and that I set 265 days. I hit it in 260, and because it boils down to math at some level. And when you can get that data and take all the emotion and drama out of it, which is really hard to do, because I've done an unscientific study. 100% of the people I've met that struggle with weight are emotional eaters. And so it's unscientific, but I've never run into one who wasn't. And at some level, they eat to feel better, that's where they get the term comfort food. But it's predictable. And the cold water plunge is another method to work the math. So
it's not to change, but it's just amazing what it does, and how it turns white fat into brown fat, which we burn much faster. It's just another way to help with long term, and you can get them, and then go in it every day or whatever. And it's really you only have to be in it 11 minutes a week total.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, it's pretty cool, because I got to a point where I was jumping in that pool. I got to a point where I was staying for 15 minutes, and it's like, but that first couple, and they say if you're going to do that, you guys don't get cold enough in Florida, I don't think, right?
We're North Florida. We get some cool weather, but not quite as
30 degrees consistently, less than 30 degrees. Yeah.
No,
you'd have to buy an actual cold plunge to do it then.
Yeah.
But I had to have my wife out there when I did the first one, because they're like, just be careful, you could have a heart attack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your heart.
Well, And that's great that you can do the cold plunge. But one thing that I impress upon everybody listening is that you don't have to do things that are that unique. I mean, cold plunge is a way to do it. I'm not knocking that, but you don't have to do those things to lose weight if you're morbidly obese. You can do it with and not do things that a doctor would argue with. You don't have to do anything that's drastic to lose weight, but you just have to learn how to stick to it. You have to learn how to go the distance, just like you do with cold plunges.
I would not do cold plunges if I was morbidly obese. I would just cut my food back because it's too much. I have a older daughter who's pretty heavy, and she's gonna do boot camp. Well, they're like, no, don't, and she didn't listen. And of course, she tore her ACL because it's a lot of weight that people don't. It's been put on over time. It's like the frog in the pan that you're turning the stove up slowly and slowly. They don't realize how big they've gotten.
Oh no, no, and one last thing I'll say. I mean, we say a lot of people will say, "Oh, fast. You don't lose it too fast. Don't do this." And I say, look at it in perspective of how you gained it.
Yep.
If you most people who struggle with obesity gain somewhere between 5 to 10 pounds a year over a lifetime. Okay, and it's typically more in the 5 or 6 pounds a year. And if somebody's just losing a pound a week, I mean, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if they average out a pound, I mean, that's 52 pounds compared to 5 pounds. That's 10 times faster than you gained it. That's not slow. That's fast, perspective wise. But we don't get that perspective. We gain 5 pounds a year for 10 years and want to lose 50 pounds a week for 3 weeks and have it all off, and it just doesn't work that way. So when they get the perspective that they are winning, they give themselves the chance to go the distance. And that's what's interesting. When somebody sees it from that light, then they have what I call day one mentality. Because you know how when you start to lose weight, you get that day one mentality that you're going to do it. Day two is not always that good, but day one is always great. If you keep that day one mentality, anything's possible, even for somebody who has struggled with weight their entire life. I mean, and that's the biggest piece of it is there's hope. I hope somebody gets out of this that, hey, if a guy like me that was 304 pounds at 55 can drop his weight, I promise you anybody can, because I was a failure of failures at it.
How tall are you?
5'11".
So that was a lot of weight.
I was a big old boy, but at the time,
I mean, I'm 6'2". I'm 6'2".
You don't see it.
All right. Well, I'm 6'2", and with muscle at the time, I mean, I was pushing 250 and then my worst was 290. And that was, and I dropped a lot of weight. I dropped over 50 pounds, just,
Good for you.
And then, but I've, over time you go, okay, I'm in Rotary now. I'm in the president. I've seen my pictures lately going, okay, I carry all my weight just in my gut. That's where all my weight is. So if I gain 50 pounds, it's in my gut. You can see it. Most people can't see it, but I can. And that's my thing. It's like, okay, now that I've done what I've went through, my industry has been horrible for a year, and it's going to be, now I've really researched it. It's going to be bad probably another 9 years before it gets better. So I'm looking at other avenues. That's why I do what I do, all this other stuff. I'm looking for alternative sources of income, because you never know what's going to happen anymore.
Well, you're good at this too. Everybody's not good at it, but you're being good at something makes it more fun too. So you clearly are, and I'm saying that sincerely. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
I talked to a lot of people that aren't so good at it, but
it's a skill. You got to learn it. I mean, I cut my teeth on radio. I take it back. I do mortgages. So when I talk to people on the phone, I have to ask them questions. I ask them why they're planning on doing what they're doing. I'm not one of those order takers who just go, "What's your rate? What's this?" I want to find out who you are, because it's more involved than just here's a loan. And I've learned years ago asking those questions, and I sold by the phone for 18 years, and and I didn't realize it was because of my voice I did so well, right? I mean, I would get people to connect with me a lot better. Fast forward to today, then it was people coming in the office, and they take up a lot of your time. A 20-minute appointment now is an hour appointment, right? And then the pandemic happened, and we do it now through Zoom and so many other ways that it's just so much better for me with what we do. And my focus has always been talking to clients and talking to people. So when I got into podcasting after radio, it was like, this is easy. This is what I like doing. I want to find out everything about you. This is what I get in trouble for. when I'm at a table and my wife's next to me and I'm asking people questions why they voted a certain way just because I'm curious, and she's squeezing my leg telling me to shut up. I don't shut up. I want to know. I want to know what makes people who they are, you know?
Sure. No, I love that too. I do. And yeah, and when you ask questions of people, you actually find out a little something about them, and it makes the journey a whole lot more fun. And you probably get a ton of referrals in the mortgage business, I imagine, because you take time with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's still people. That's great, and it works really well. However, today, when we only, we're at 35% of our normal inventory because of the fact that just everybody has 2% interest rates. When we were putting everybody in 2% interest rates, I told some people we're going to take existing home sales from 85% of the market down to like less than 50, and we're at 35. So,
yep. I'm right there. Yeah, the idea of buying another home is no fun when you look at the interest rate difference. But I also remember my first home, and I'm giving away my age. My first home was
18.
13.9% negative amortization loan back in 1984.
Yeah, it's because now a lot of that stuff's coming out on TikTok now, all those old shows, and it's like today's interest rate is 17.9, and then they go to people and they pan and go, well, 15% is a good interest rate. I don't think we're going to get back to 12, but it's 17 today, ma'am. I mean,
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah. And the kind of people. So what goes around is just cyclical. Like you said, it'll come back around. You do the best you can.
Well, it's going to take a while. So I'm like, it's got to be something else I can do because I don't want to stress over that. So
I get it.
All right. Well, sir, it was nice talking to you, Alan. If there's anything I can help you with, let me know in the future. Again, people can find out the information. Go to your website. What was the website again?
Transformmyfuture.com. /ask Ed.
I assume that was mine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I did it for you. So, yep, it'll be and yeah, they can check out that training, but they can also just Transform My Future. They can see a lot about us and what we've done. So,
all right, I appreciate you being on the show today, Alan. I really appreciate it.
It was a blast. Great meeting you, my friend. Thanks so much for the kind words. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. You too. And again, thank you for being here.